It's Walking and Talking number 2, in which I walk and talk without anything in particular to say to you, but nonetheless I'll continue to walk and talk for a pretty long duration. Right off the bat, this feels difficult. Immediately, I have this feeling of not knowing what to say. And I know that there's a long time ahead of me, but I'm not afraid or worried, because I'm confident that I'll get into the flow of things. When I do things for a long time, I feel that I'm able to reach a certain state of flow that I wouldn't be able to reach in doing something for a short time. Also, doing something repetitively helps that too. Doing something on a regular basis. Walking and talking is still in its infancy. And so I wonder how it will change as time passes and I do much more episodes and walk and talk for many more hours. Anyhow, all these things are not really important. They're just kind of abstractions thinking about the future. And I realized that from watching the last video that I would like to say and less. I still have this feeling, I thought that this is a bad video, that I'm wasting my time. And I have sort of an unpleasant feeling in association with that. Not knowing if I'm doing the right thing. But there's a part of me that knows that I really should just keep going, despite these doubts. I'm talking at a kind of a slow pace with lots of pauses in between the words. And maybe further along, I'll be able to increase my rate of talking. If I just focus on talking, focus on saying a lot of words and sentences that more or less make sense without having so much time in between them. It's rush hour right now and there's a lot of traffic noise, but by the end of the video that should have died down quite a bit. There was another pause there in which I was thinking about things to say, and I pretty much judged all of them to be not good things to say, because they were kind of things to describe my current situation, or my recent past. For instance, I was gonna describe how I feel, and I was gonna say that I feel kind of full, and that's true, and that's a fine thing to say. My belly feels full right now, and that is because I ate some food shortly before walking and talking. And I wonder if it's a better idea not to eat beforehand, if the feeling of emptiness would be more conducive to focusing. And I noticed just now that my brow was furrowed, kind of like this, as I was talking and thinking of things to say. And when I noticed that, I just unfurrowed my brow in an attempt to kind of relieve the slight feeling of discomfort that I have, or unease. If I just pay attention to what my body's doing and I feel that it's tensed up somewhere, then I can consciously relax it. And I think that will probably affect my mood in a positive way. I'm not totally sure about that, but I think so. So I'm making an effort to stay relaxed, but also trying to stay focused. Focused on continuing to say things to you that might help you stay engaged and help you focus. And maybe you'll also become a little more aware of your body, and you might become aware of any tension that you're holding in your body and maybe make an effort to relax it and notice how that feels. And then I thought, as I was saying those words, I had this thought that this is beginning to sound like a guided meditation or something, and I don't want it to sound that way. But I'm not sure why I don't want that. I think that I don't want to come across as didactic, and also I want to do something other than a guided meditation, because the internet is full of stuff like that, and I don't think it's really needed to make another version of it. There's another gap where I was wondering what to say. I wonder if I'm not feeling slightly foggy because of having eaten. Maybe I need to eat a lighter meal, even though my meal was very light. Maybe after a while my mental acuity will increase. Still this feeling of failing. I feel this feeling of failing. I feel this, I'm imagining all these viewers feeling sorry for me or just making fun of me. But I think I just need to stop worrying about that. And focus on being here with you. Again, my brow is furrowed. like that. Will this whole walk have a kind of furrowed brow feeling to it? Everything that I say sounds dumb to me. It sounds concerted, like a concerted effort to say, to I don't know what, to be clever, or maybe a concerted effort to not be clever, or a concerted effort to just be really normal and just say what I'm feeling. But I guess it feels effortful, and it's not a good feeling. What is this, a self-fulfilling prophecy? If I think that this is bad, is it just going to make it actually bad? If I worry so much, is it going to fill this video with worrisome feelings that will broadcast out over the internet to everybody? I'm going to make an effort to walk a little faster now, and maybe that'll help me talk faster. Even the sound of my voice sounds terrible. I hear my own voice in my head and I think it sounds dumb. Why is that? I'm not sure if I'm judging myself based on the imaginary criteria of other people. I'm not sure if I'm imagining other people's judgment or if it's my own judgment. And I'm not sure if there's really a difference. I feel like giving up. Part of me wants to just stop this video and go home and not post this thing. And maybe just give up the whole series. I feel a lot worse than when I was sitting and smiling. At the moment, this feels really, I don't know, maybe I can just snap out of it. Maybe there's a way I can just let go of all that, and this like cycle of negativity will stop. How do you do that? You focus on something else. Just try to block that cycle by bringing some other kind of thought in. That also feels a little unnatural and a little effortful. And like maybe it would be just kind of burying the negativity. Maybe I should just, I think I should really just like let the negativity play itself out, see how far it goes, and maybe it'll just end up, playing itself out and then fizzling out, and I'll get to the other side of it. But now I'm not sure if I'm still feeling negative. Now I feel like maybe I'm just feeling kind of neutral. But at the same time, I think that I don't feel as alert as I could feel, as I could be feeling. Maybe it's because of eating, and also that I got a lot of physical exercise today. I did a whole lot of stuff physically. And so I could be a little tired. And maybe I'm thinking maybe I should do this first thing in the morning instead of the evening. So I had this plan to just like let this negativity spiral out of control, you know, like on its own volition, and not try and stop it. But then as I started to try to implement that plan, it seemed like the negativity like went away, and I just started feeling kind of neutral and just kind of like low level, I don't know how to say it, like low level torpor. Yeah, like torpor. And so the thing with the negativity didn't escalate or climax in a way that I was thinking maybe it would. So in a way, that's its own kind of disappointment. Like I thought maybe that there would be some kind of catharsis, but now it feels like I feel like an absence of energy and positivity right now, but not enough energy for the negativity to lead towards catharsis and change. But to be honest, as I started to say the last sentence, when I said that I was feeling a lack of positivity and energy, as I said those words, I noticed a part of myself that found those words interesting, and was observing myself saying those words from a slightly outside perspective. And from that perspective, they didn't seem totally true. And I had the feeling that even in this talking about feeling negative feelings, or just feeling kind of neutral, or feeling torpor, in the background somewhere, I think there was a little bit of interest or hope, or not exactly hope, but a kind of confidence that something is being revealed here, and that I'm not necessarily just on some on the wrong path or something. Like the feeling that this will work out, or that this is working out, even if I'm not aware of it all the time. Like in the parts where I'm talking about feeling these negative feelings, you know, often it's true that I am feeling them, but then I have a kind of confidence that is based on thought and past experiences, that if I just experience those negative feelings and allow them to be there without trying too hard to cover them up or bury them, and, you know, just keep moving forward despite them, things will change, and the negative feelings won't last forever, and I may even come out the other side feeling rewarded or something, or having discovered something because of having gone through the negative part. And I think that is true, and I generally tend to believe that things even out. Like the amount of negative and positive feelings that we experience even out to neutral, ultimately. But I'm also entertaining the possibility that in addition to this up and down, negative, positive dichotomy that we experience to life, that maybe there is another option that's like to the side of that, that is something different altogether from the negative positive dichotomy. And I like to try and occupy that parallel track if it's possible. And talking like this, walking and talking right now, I feel like is helping me to occupy that side path, that parallel thing that is different from the good, bad way of living life, or existing in time, or whatever. That train of thought kind of came to an end, and then there was a gap, and I was trying to think of what to say, but I'm realizing that it's best, well, actually, I'm not sure if it's best, but what I'm trying to do is not think about what to say and just say things without thinking about them. And that seems to work out best. I don't know what I mean really by saying it works out best. There's not really a best. It's just what I'm doing. It would be fine to think about things to say, but that's not what I'm doing. I'm just talking as continuously as I can. But I've already explained that to you, so unless you skipped forward in the video, then I think you're already well acquainted with what I'm doing here. Just continuously talking. I was gonna say something, but then I remember that I talked about it at length in the last video, and I'm trying not to repeat myself so much. But it's not that repetition per se is a bad thing, but I want to be saying things that are the most authentic and relevant to this moment now. And so it may be that those things are things that I've said in the past, or said similar things in the past, but it could also be that I don't want to fall back on using thoughts that I've already formed in the past so much. I don't want to be relying too much on pre-formulated thoughts, as opposed to formulating thoughts at the same time that I'm speaking, formulating the thoughts at the same time that I speak them. So it's like formulating sentences, and all the thoughts should be formed in sentence format. And that's a common way that we think in our mind, is in sentences, or at least sentence fragments, I think. And I think also maybe I think sometimes in very emotive words in my head, even if I'm just not talking or being silent. Sometimes if I'm feeling a strong emotion, I'll be imagining words in my head that are said with a strong emotive affect, reflecting the way that I feel. And sometimes I see that and think that they are, I imagine myself saying that, and then later I'll think that I wouldn't want to act that way in real life, and then take it as a kind of indicator that I'm fucked up in some way, or just that not necessarily, I don't have to say that I'm fucked up, or I can just take it as an indicator that there's a negative emotion residing in me that is trying to call attention to some kind of need that is not being met in my life. And although it's not that important, words said with a strong emotional affect might be one of such indicators. We passed a bunch of geese, and I wonder what it would be like to be experiencing without having the spoken language. I mean, I don't really have to wonder that. I've had plenty of experiences that I don't think that didn't involve imagining words in my head. But most other animals exist that way the whole time. Now I had that thought as I was saying that this is, I'm getting off track here. I'm like this kind of like just talking about what animals experience is like. To me, I started to think that this is a half-baked thought that I started to say as a sentence, and I started to think that I really didn't know what I was getting into when I began talking about that subject. Like like maybe the idea of starting to talk about the geese and what a goose's experience is like without the words. I think that was actually a little bit of a contrivance that was maybe informed by a certain desire for me to sound intelligent. And to a desire for me to sound intelligent and to sound like I know something about consciousness and thought and psychology and all this stuff, which is not really true, I don't think. At least I didn't actually. I don't think I was actually saying anything insightful when I started talking about animal experience. And I realized that as I was talking about it, and I realized that there was this effort that I was trying to say something insightful, and then a realization that I didn't actually have any insight. And then I began to just expose that process, which I'm still in the process of doing, but now I'm actually in the process of revealing the subsequent process, or the last process of revealing what was going on in my mind as I started to talk about the geese. And then so now I'm remembering 3 levels that occurred here. And now, as I'm saying that, now I'm in the 4th one. The first level was talking about animal experience, and the second level was talking about my motivation and my experience that I was having when I was talking about the geese. And then the third level was talking about my process and my experience while I was talking about the second level, which was talking about my motivation and experience of talking about the geese. And then when I started to talk about that I was on 3 levels, then that was the 4th level. So I guess that makes this one the 5th level. And I could probably go on indefinitely doing this pattern of levels, but I think you probably get the idea, and it's not really important to keep going in this loop like that. But or maybe I am actually continuing to go in this loop of levels, or continuing to talk about my experience that I was having while I was narrating the previous thought or the previous concept. And each time I do that, I could describe it as moving up a level. If I'm moving up a level in terms of just analyzing analyzing what I was just talking about, or analyzing what I was just analyzing. And that's one way to think about it, but that also implies distinct levels, like a stepped progression of thought. And it's at times I think that it will feel like that stepped progression of thought, like moving from one subject to the next subject, or not necessarily subjects, but like moving from one level of analysis to the next. I'm just using the word level again, so it's become a circular argument. But at other times, it won't be so apparent that it's levels. It would just be kind of a continuous stream, I think, and not necessarily seeming like I'm moving up. But the whole idea of moving up is also just kind of an abstraction too. It's kind of a metaphor or a visualization of this way of thinking, but actually what's happening when I say that I'm moving up a level, I think what's actually happening is that I'm maybe bringing the collapsing the past thought into the present thought by almost distancing myself from the thought that I just had, alienating myself from that thought, distancing myself from it by the process of beginning to analyze that thought as a past event. And then when I'm analyzing that past thought, that's now the present. So it's a way of taking, it's just, I was going to say it's a way of keeping my thoughts in the present. But truthfully, how can my thoughts ever not be in the present? Thoughts, the present is the only thing that really exists. But that's funny that I say that, because and I'm asking myself now, is it true that only the present exists and the future and the past aren't real? And a way that I've thought about it in the past is that the past and the future actually do exist in the present as thought. The past existing in the present as memory. Which is actually, and the future existing as projection. But memory is actually, they're both actually forms of projection. And what memory really consists of is the way that the synapses are structured in my brain in the present. If my brain weren't structured exactly the way it is in the present, I wouldn't have exactly the same memories that I have. And thinking about time in the conventional sense, I could say that my mind's present configuration has been formed by the experiences that I've had in the past, which entered my mind through the six senses, or the five senses, six senses, I forget. So something enters your sense receptor, and your sense receptor sends a signal to your brain, and that goes into your synapses, and then it affects how your synapses are arranged. And that arrangement we think of as a memory. And so it's like our brain is recording things that happened your brain continuously records things that affect it, and as you move forward through time, although I do feel a little awkward phrasing it that way, moving forward through time. But just take that as a given for now. As you move forward through time, all these experiences shape your brain, and then you have this huge, you have all these memories, but it's really just when you think about the past, which we do all the time, you're doing that in the present, and it's only your brain structure in the present that creates this past. And perhaps it's even your brain interacting with the present world that creates this past. And I say that because you'll sense a certain thing, and you will recognize it if it corresponds with memories that you have that are similar to it. So you're in the world, and you sense something, or you experience something, and it goes into your brain, and it gets and that brings up your memories of the past that might relate to this thing that you're experiencing in the present. And you don't necessarily remember everything that you've ever experienced. In fact, you don't remember everything you've experienced or sensed. Especially at any given time, at any given moment, you're not remembering your whole life behind you. You're just remembering the things that relate in some way to what you're experiencing in the present. And because of that, I think that even more so, the past is something that is being created in the present, because it's your present brain structure in interaction with the present world around you. That calls up that creates the memories, I think, or that it's interacting with the present world that calls these certain synaptic structures in your brain to come up and function as memories. And give you this sense of the past. So that's why I think that the past is a kind of is a projection from the present, or at least that's one way to think about it. I don't think it's by any means an inherently true thing or an ultimately true thing. Because if you want to say that the past is real and it really happened, I think that's also just as true and legitimate. Or like maybe our memories are more or less reliable, or there maybe our memories and or our collective memory as a species is to a greater or to a lesser degree reliable, or whatever, it doesn't matter. We can still say that there was a past, for sure. That's a way of thinking about it. And then there's this also alternate way of thinking about it of as a projection of from the present. And the future, I think, is more obviously a projection of the present. Because for whatever reason, we don't have memories of the future like we do of the past. We have like a we just have like a rough prediction of what's going to happen. Based on our memories of the past. But why is that? Why does the future have such a different quality than the past does? I can't grasp it. I'm being a little bit quiet here because I'm just trying to like have a real comprehension of how the future differs from the past. And all that's happening is it's just making me stop thinking. Like I'm just kind of like my thinking is just kind of shutting down. It feels like when I try and comprehend that. And I feel just kind of, you know, I was thinking I was gonna say like it makes me feel like I'm in the present, but it makes me feel like I'm being present, like as they say, being present. But I'm starting to feel a little bit suspicious of that kind of terminology. Because how are you ever not present? I guess the alternative is that you're living in the past or you're living in the future. You're thinking too much about the past or worrying about the future. I guess that is the implied thing that you are supposed to avoid when they say you should be present. But right now I don't actually see a problem with thinking about the past or the future per se, or even worrying about it. You know, I mean, actually, in this state, like, currently, I honestly feel like, what's the problem with worrying? Go ahead and worry. It's fine. But then, as I say that, I also know that the feeling of worrying is not a good feeling. the feeling of maybe thinking that something is gonna not go the way that you want it to go in the future. I'm very familiar with that feeling. You know, I think I just caught myself doing this thing where I'd want to say something insightful. And I started to get into this. And I think I also have this motivation to want to counter popular New Age spiritual advice and stuff, because I'm aware that this idea of being present and not living in the past or the future is a very popular message, and so there's a part of me that wants to counter that and question it, and I think that's perfectly valid. But I think I, again, got into trying to say something insightful where I didn't really have the insight. But now as I'm saying this, I feel like I'm falling back on a technique that I used earlier in this video of a technique of like declaring myself as having caught myself doing something that had some kind of nefarious motivation, or a bad motivation, or like maybe like an egocentric motivation, and so then I call myself out and I reveal that I was doing something bad, and thus I show how reflective I am, how self-aware that I am, and able to be wrong sometimes and recognize that I'm wrong, and that sort of thing, and to kind of, it feels, what it feels like is a demonstration of my virtue. And now that seems kind of dumb to me, but when I say that, I'm probably still just doing the same thing. I think I am still just doing the same thing, and that I'm just explaining to you that I've again leveled up on myself, moved up another level of observing my own behavior and thought, and finding my own, and discovering and revealing my own motivations that are egocentric, and even as I did that and started to talk about it, I was engaging in the exact same behavior, and I'm still doing it now. I actually feel like I can't stop. Just keep continuing to move up layers of telling you that the thing that I just did was somehow bad or egocentric, and then in the action of doing that, I'm just repeating the same thing again, and it feels like there's no way to stop, like there's nothing else that I can do. And if it's, I suppose that if it's true that there's nothing else that I can do, then I don't have to judge it as a negative behavior or an egocentric behavior necessarily. Then there's also this idea that if I am identifying egocentric behaviors and I keep doing that, then it's a process of whittling away that or something, or self-discovery or something like that. But yeah, then even as I say that, that sounds egocentric. And then as I no, this is funny. Every time I call myself out as being egocentric, it's like that's supposed to be an action that is non-egocentric, to observe your own behavior from a distance or something. But then if I if I am going to award that behavior any merit, then I'm again pumping myself up. It's actually it's like this. There's like this cycle that's taking place that I think relies on the good-bad dichotomy. But to be honest, I've been enjoying watching this cycle play itself out. Like it felt there like I was locked into it. Like when I said that I can't do anything else but move up in levels. So on some other level, there's some part of me that was enjoying that feeling of being locked in, or just enjoying the thought process of coming into this cycle that would just keep perpetuating itself. And in a way, it's like I could just ride that momentum. And now I think that cycle has played itself out, and I'm doing something else now, and I'm not quite sure what it is, and it feels a little more unsure, a little more unsteady, kind of yeah, I'm not sure what I'm doing right now. I don't feel like I'm locked into a pattern or a cycle right now. Just kind of free floating, I could say. But I did have the thought just now that I started to remember the way that I was talking towards the beginning of the video, and the negative feelings, and expressing this wonder, like, what if this is a bad video? What if it doesn't go well? And then I compared that feeling to the present feeling, or at least how I felt about the most recent talking, and I thought that like I do actually feel like I'm in the flow of it now. At least like for the past while, actually. Feel like I'm in the flow and that I'm finding things, that I'm finding out what I'm saying. I'm saying things that I couldn't have predicted that I would say, and I'm having thought processes that I couldn't have predicted before. And so that was a good feeling. But then every time I have a good feeling, I am a little bit wary because I know how these cycles go, and that I wonder if I'm gonna be having good feelings, if it's just gonna then lead to starting to have negative feelings about something. Right now just now I kind of stumbled a little bit or something, and I'm wondering if my focus is drifting off or something. But it's actually, there's honestly no reason to worry about going into the negative part of the cycle, because if that's true, that having positive feelings is going to lead to negative feelings, then it also means it's true that having the negative feelings is going to lead to the positive feelings again. So there's not a reason to worry about it, except for the fact that worrying about it will be part of the cycle, and that's fine too. Like worrying about it in a negative way, that's fine. You're just going, further down on the negative part of the cycle, and then in as much as you go down, you're also going to go up. So it doesn't matter. Worrying is fine too. On the same token, when you are in the negative part of the cycle, when you're having the negative feelings, you don't exactly have a choice to just immediately stop feeling negative and start feeling positive. I don't think so, at least. In my experience, it doesn't seem true. And to the same extent that I'm saying when you're in the positive part of the cycle, there's no reason to worry, I also recognize that when you're in the negative part of the cycle, there's absolutely no reason to feel good about it, because maybe even though I am feeling negative, and that I know that the negative feeling won't last forever and I will feel positive again, I will also know that I would also just feel negative again. And so it's like from the negative perspective, there's no real reason to have hope, or there's no hope really, because you will know quite rightly that whatever positive feelings you feel in the future will again return to negativity, and everything will balance out to become neutral. But in the present, when you are feeling negative in the present, like an unpleasant feeling, then I don't think there's any quick or easy way out of that, other than possibly, I'm going to show you this weird corner full of hair. There's just a bunch of fur or something over here. Anyways, I was saying there's no cheaper, quicker, easy way out of the negative feeling, other than possibly the thing that I was mentioning earlier of like going to the side where you kind of step off of the good bad ride. But again, and it's, you could say that that's neutral. Maybe it is neutral, but it also is a different kind of experience even than being neutral. Like, you say neutral because it connotes a state on the dichotomy, a middle ground on the dichotomy. But like moving to the side off of the dichotomy, it's like you're not feeling good or bad, but you're not even exactly feeling neutral. And I think that's a kind of state that I'm not even sure if I can describe with words. But it's something that comes about sometimes when I'm walking and talking like this. I mean, not like that pile of trash in the water, but just kind of like what's sort of been happening for me, at least. I don't know if it's happening for you. I guess that's my goal in making these videos, is to have that kind of state happen for you as well as for me. But even if it just happens for me, then that's totally fine with me, actually. Like this, the notion of wanting to help the world, maybe I think about it as wanting to bring people, or it's generally maybe, or at least on the surface, maybe it's thought of as wanting to bring people back to the good side of the good-bad dichotomy. And it seems like there's so many ways of doing that, and it's like that could be said to be the whole basis of work that people do in life. Like all work maybe relates to that in some way. It's in some form of the other. I don't know. I'm not sure if this holds water. But what I was gonna say is, like, maybe all work relates to bringing people to the good side of the good-bad dichotomy, but then that's still always a temporary state, because you always go to the bad side of the dichotomy anyways, and then like this kind of like gets into your standard like Buddhist or New Age philosophy, where like, you know, you look about how, say, the rich people are just as unhappy as the poor people. It's not about your material condition. And yeah, I think that's totally true, and doesn't really need rehashing by me. But now I kind of forget what I was getting at, or I'm not sure if I was actually getting at anything anyways. Another little gap there while my train of thought trailed off, and then my thoughts kind of went back to the practical. Like I started to think about how long have I been walking today? How much do I have left to go? starting to think about like, oh, how long did it take me to get to this part of the trail? And starting to feel a little bit of like weariness, or a thought like, oh, I want this to be over soon or something, or want to be done with this talk. And then so like all that happened in the short amount of time that I wasn't talking. So then I just started talking again, and when I stay in this, like when I just keep the talking up, like all that stuff just kind of like stays at bay or disappears from my mind. And it's like just by continuing to talk, it seems like, at least for the meantime, I'm like able to sustain some different state of being, one that's divorced from like the practicalities of life, even though I know it's not really. Nothing ever is really. But maybe it's a kind of like reaching towards the outer limits, away from practicality. And I wonder, I don't think that's necessarily a form of escapism or escape from anything. That's maybe just
for me the focus is
no, I think it's just a I don't know, kind of probing a different aspect of reality, or a different way of experiencing reality. And again, I'm like kind of slowing down a little bit now, and then maybe I'll make a little effort to just pick up my walking pace, and I'll see if that helps me to talk faster. And now I'm again we're getting to the part of the bike path that's very populated by pedestrians and joggers and cyclists. And then if you watched the previous video, then you know that like I start to feel a little weird about videotaping and having all these people get into the video, because I fear that they may not want that, or if they realize that they're being videotaped, they might feel uncomfortable with it, or is it even morally reprehensible to even do it without them noticing. And then so what I've done in the past is start to point the video camera down towards the ground, or towards my feet walking, and but then I realized that that's like a little bit less of a pleasant viewpoint. So what I'm going to do is just point the camera when I'm able to get distance shots, because I think that'll be more pleasant for you to look at. And I'm just doing that when there's not a whole bunch of people getting really close in the frame, and like getting their faces in the frame and stuff like that. And so if I point it towards the ground or towards my feet, it may just be because I'm trying to avoid like directly like videotaping another person, just in regard for their own privacy. I mean, maybe I feel a slight amount of physical tiredness in my legs, just a little bit, but I'm pretty confident that I'll be able to keep going here for quite a while. I'm like aggressively keeping to the right side of the trail, even though there's a couple walking right at me trying to be on this side so that I would have to go to the left of them. But I just decided to be steadfast in upholding the unwritten rule of keeping to the right, staying on the right side. And I guess I'll go this way, keeping to the right side, and I think it's mainly so that it would be easier to not get a bunch of people right in the frame. Am I feeling a little distracted by all the people around? A little distracted from talking? No, I don't think so. I think they may be having some effect on the way that I'm talking, but even if it is a distraction, then I think it's just distraction is a valid effect on my thought. And then there's
yeah.
I had this thought about, or I imagined everybody else as being in this different mind state than me, or a different mind state than I was until a few minutes ago, because now I feel like my thinking / talking has less continuity to it. That's what I feel like right now. That like I'm not as focused, and my thoughts don't last as long or have the same kind of continuity that they just did. And as I said that, I noticed my brow being furrowed again. So now maybe I'm starting to enter a little bit into the negative part of the cycle again, but saying that doesn't even really feel that true, I think, because of having just discussed this negative positive cycle for so long. You know, having like analyzed it so much, it doesn't feel quite as real to me now. And I think that fact in itself seems to have a slightly positive connotation, or at least I think it would conventionally, but maybe I'm just like thinking in terms of, like, you know, how like a Buddhist would typically characterize spiritual progress as being a lessening of the good-bad dichotomy in your mind. But you know, like even to adopt that set of values still means there's valuation, and even to have this idea of spiritual progress, like, enters again just into that, it maintains that same dichotomy, just like at a different level, but I don't think that's even a higher level. It's like maybe not even at a different level, maybe at like a worse level. I don't know, could be. No, I don't think worse. Couldn't be worse if it can't be better. It's just like different, or maybe not even. I have this thinking that like what I'm saying right now you're probably not grasping. I don't want to say that in a patronizing way. I'm just saying that I think that I may not be speaking in the most clear, as clear as I could about this, or I may not. There may be a clear way of explaining what I'm thinking about, and that's so maybe I'll just kind of try and start over with that and say, like we've been talking about this good bad cycle, and my participation in it, or my being dragged through it, or just moving through it, and which I've experienced to some extent on this walking and talk, but then it seems like a pretty widespread teaching or piece of advice or something that you should learn to take these good and bad cycles with equanimity and just live through them, and the better you're able to do that, then the more you're progressing spiritually. But I have this feeling like one that's going to happen to everybody naturally, just as a byproduct of living life. The fact that everybody will feel good and bad emotions, and as that time goes on, will have greater and greater memories of feeling good and bad, and thus be able to put together this picture of good and bad moving in these cycles, and a greater understanding of them being temporary. Like, I don't think you can continue. I don't think you can live through life without learning that. And then yeah, and then like I was saying, if that's considered progress, or if it's considered a thing that you can attain through a certain practice or effort, and then you're progressing, then that's again engaging in this valuation of good, and then maybe contributing the cycle again. But I'm getting tired of thinking about this now. And does that mean I'm just gonna like give up on this thought because it seems uninteresting to me? Does that mean that I lack determination in thinking? That like I'm leaving a thought unfinished or something? I think it's just that some feeling in me just arose that this isn't important to talk about, or that I don't really have any insight, or maybe it could just be that like it's not even something that is important to tell anybody or to say, whether there's any truth to it or not. And then yeah, now I just unfurrowed my brow again while I was slightly aware of my exhalation, and then maybe also like I unhunched my shoulders a little bit. As we walk up a hill, being the kind of physical metaphor for the difficult part of the emotional cycle. But it's not a very big hill, so it's not very taxing physically or emotionally. I'm happy to report, I guess. And then, as I was saying, happy to report, I wondered if I was actually happy to report that or not. And then, yeah, during that last gap, I was kind of I was thinking about the other people that I see around right now, the people that I'm seeing here in real life, and that you're probably seeing some of them too. And I think I was just trying to like start to formulate some thought about how I relate to them. And I was not successful in formulating that thought, so I don't have anything to say about that at this time. And I'm not sure. I was gonna say again that I don't have anything to say right now. And that's been true the whole time. And it's true now, and there's some stops in between my words now. Not the most stops that there have ever been during this walking talking series, but more than there are during some times when I'm just talking more continuously and there seems to be a stream of thought flowing more fluently or something. And now I was thinking that now that there's not a fluent stream of thought, but as I explain that and I say that, maybe I'm proving myself wrong, and perhaps this is a fluent stream of thought. And I think there's always, most of the time there's always thought going on in my head, but when I talk, when I say the words, like as soon as I can, like as close as possible to actually thinking the words, if I let the words come out of my mouth as soon as possible after thinking them, I don't feel myself thinking as much. It feels kind of like a state of not thinking if I'm just keep talking like this. And in the gaps where I'm not talking, I think sometimes what's happening is that that I am noticing myself thinking, that I feel myself thinking, and then it's like even actually sometimes while I'm talking, there might be other streams of thought happening that I'm not saying, and I just noticed that happen. Like while I was saying something just now, and then I had another thought that about a person that I passed by that I didn't say. And it could be actually that this is a kind of process that keeps going on, by which I'm kind of accumulating and building things to talk about, things to say, and maybe even like mentally auditioning them before I start to talk about them. Like a thought will come into my head, maybe while I'm not talking, maybe while I am talking, and then I'm thinking about whether that's a good thought to talk about, whether to say, and then I'll either say it or not say it. But I don't think that's happening that much of the time, but I noticed it happening that time, and I noticed it because the thought that I had, I judged it as not really a good thought to say out loud. Not that it was like a bad or embarrassing thought or anything like that. It was just, I judged it as not being that interesting, or maybe not relevant to this train of thought. And now you might be wondering what that thought was, and I can tell you what it is, and it's the thought in itself. I don't think that there's anything interesting about it at all, but maybe I should just tell you what it was anyways, because now that I've talked about the thought so much, maybe that lends it some interest, and maybe even also this quality that I am judging this thought to have of being totally uninteresting. Maybe that in it, that actually lends it some interest. Maybe that actually makes it interesting somehow. So I'll tell you the thought was that I just passed somebody, and then maybe we made like slight eye contact or something, or I noticed them looking in my direction, and then being aware of my own appearance of walking and holding this camera and talking into it, and there's like a little, this camera isn't the most obvious as a camera. Like maybe like it's also an audio recording device, and since I keep talking into it, the thought that I had was maybe people here in real life will, when they see me talking into this device and walking, maybe they will just think that I'm only recording audio, like a voice memo sort of thing, or that I'm talking into a phone of some sort, a weird looking phone, and then maybe they won't feel a self-conscious feeling of being videotaped, and that would be, I would like that. I would like to not be making people feel self-conscious, but and at the same time I am trying to kind of point the camera a little bit off to my right here, where it's gonna be capturing less humans in the frame, at least not up close, like maybe the most of the humans that do get in the frame will be farther away, and so they're like, it's not going to necessarily show their identity or anything like that. And so like that's I'm just trying to respect privacy in that way, but then at the same time, like if you're walking past me and you see this thing and you realize that it's a video camera that's on, you could have some suspicious thoughts. And I think in the first video I definitely talked about that a lot, and because I was having very negative feelings for a while regarding that situation. But I think now I have a better idea of how to remedy that, or at least I know that that I am not capturing that many people. I'm not actually videotaping that many people because of the way that I'm aiming the camera. And then, but this, yeah, so that's the thought that I was beginning to have while I was talking about something else, and I was judging that thought to be not really worthy of talking about, and then I just kind of talked about, then I noticed that process happening, and then I talked about that, and then that brought me to the actual revelation of that original thought anyways. And then that kind of petered off into something that I've already talked about a lot, and then so that it again became uninteresting to me, so I let that kind of die off, and then now I'm just again just like explaining that whole process, or doing that thing that I was earlier describing as leveling up, where I continuously describe my experience and or process of having the previous thought, or having the previous like sentence structure or thing that I was talking about, and then so that's something that's coming up again. It's something that's repeating from earlier in the video, I realize, and I'm wondering now if there's something I might be missing when I'm involved in repeating something that I've already talking about. Like if there's something in the present that I could be thinking that's a little more subtle or a little bit less obvious, something that's going on in the present that I haven't noticed before, that I could be thinking about or seeing or talking about. And there's the thought that I just had now is like another repeating thought, or it's something that I thought that I've had before, and so I'm not gonna talk about that particular thought, I'm pretty certain, because I'm just gonna keep going on here, kind of searching. I feel like a searching kind of feeling, searching for something that's happening right now in my thought and in my experience that I haven't been aware of before, or that it's interesting. Like it's like I'm looking for something new here. What I'm looking for is a new thought, and then so I'm also having the thought that maybe it's not good to seek out a particular type of thought, but to just continue. You know, I've said this many times before, but just continue to keep talking and see what comes out, as opposed to looking for something new. But now I'm remembering moments earlier on this walk where thoughts that I was having had the quality of feeling new. And maybe that's also associated with what we talk about when we talk about feeling present. Or for me, if I say I'm feeling present, maybe that's in association with a feeling of discovering something that's new. Still noticing that I'm having that while I'm talking about something, like just now, I'll have a totally unrelated thought that is triggered by something that I see here in the real world, and maybe it doesn't even relate directly, but very remotely related to a thought or an emotion, and it brings that up, and I'll be thinking about something that I'm not saying, and possibly having an emotion associated with that thought. But when I have that emotion, the emotion is going to affect what I am saying. It'll affect the way that I say it, and it might even affect the content of what I'm saying. And I think I could just go ahead and tell you what it was. I just was walking, and then I passed a couple walking together, and they seemed happy to be together, and then it caused me to think of my ex-girlfriend, and then have this imaginary thought of what if we ran into each other while I was walking and talking, and I haven't seen her in a long time, and what that would be like, what I would do. And I started to have very uneasy feelings thinking about that, and it all happened very fast. I wasn't very involved or at all, just within a few seconds. And then so I felt uneasy thinking about that, and then I wondered if that uneasiness was affecting what I was talking about, which was, something talking about talking, or talking about thinking, no doubt. And just wondering if that uneasiness was entering into what I was saying and affecting it, and then something did happen where, in a way, some uneasiness, or then it totally became the content of what I was talking about. And I think this part of the trail, I'm noticing, is the same part of the trail that I felt very uneasy the last time, and it makes me realize that I'm totally free to just turn around and start walking back, and I could just skip this whole end of the trail. And I think that the uneasiness has to do with the amount of people jogging here and walking here, and that feeling of self-consciousness again, of appearing this guy talking to the tape recorder or the video recorder, and it has something to do with my it has something definitely to do with worrying about how I'm perceived by other people. And I'm not sure I think mainly it's that I do think mainly it's that I don't want to cause other people to feel uncomfortable while they're maybe just trying to get some exercise. And I wonder if it has anything also to do with me caring about my own image, or worrying about whether somebody might judge me negatively based on my appearance. But I think I'm also just gonna let that train of thought die out as I start to head back towards the less populated part of the trail. And I'm remembering now, like, seeing a person, one particular person jogging, and feeling a strange feeling, like maybe it's a feeling of judgment towards that person. I'm not sure, but just a kind of general uneasiness in relation to that person. And I'm sure that it has something to do with self-image. I think it was that I saw this person and probably judged them as being concerned about their self-image, being concerned about their body image. And then right after I did that, I recognized that I'm also concerned about my own body image. And so I guess then I just kind of empathized with that person. And I don't have any conclusive judgment about whether or not it's good or bad to be concerned with your body image. I just noticed my brow being very, very furrowed during this topic. Very furrowed brow. So now it's unfurrowed brow. I'm having the same types of feelings that I had last time when I was on this part of the trail. Especially when I saw 2 police officers go by on bikes and had this feeling of uh-oh, am I doing something wrong? And I think I had some of that feeling last time. Even though I don't remember seeing any cops last time, of this feeling of, am I doing something wrong? And that feeling didn't really come up on the other parts, the other less populated parts of this trail. It's funny, when I said the words doing something wrong, a person jogging past me said the words, everything you've done wrong. They said that as part of their conversation with the person that they were jogging with. You can tell there's more gaps in my speech while my thoughts are being affected by the people that I'm seeing. There's so many people passing by, and it seems like there's some kind of thought associated with every single one of them. At least every one that I see or that I look at, that like their image really enters my mind. So I'm just gonna try, even just keeping my eyes as far away as possible from the other people around, and
Sorry.
because I have this idea that it would be better to remain more focused on continuously talking and not having my thought continuously being affected by all these different people coming by. But it could be, that's just a judgment that I'm having right now. Doesn't necessarily mean that it's the right thing to do. It's just the thing that I'm going to do. Maybe it could be interesting on another time to just let myself experience the other people that are jogging past and narrate the thoughts that I have about them. But then that also enters this tricky territory of invasion of privacy, or that it might be, yeah, because if you're actually like, looking at and talking about people that are around you in real life without engaging them, that to me feels pretty awkward. And I'm pretty sure I'd feel awkward doing that. Unless somehow maybe, I did that once or twice already during this. But I suppose I think that was okay, because the people remained completely anonymous, and I don't think that any of the things that I said in relation to those people included any conclusive judgments. I mean, I may have been talking about judgments that occurred to me in the time that I witnessed those people, but then what I was the things that I was talking about, I think, was more along the lines of picking apart those judgments and thoughts. And I'm pretty sure that I don't think the intent was misplaced or anything there, or at least the intent doesn't feel like it was in a place that that seems wrong or weird to me.
Wait, what?
Yeah, I'm still in a furrowed brow kind of phase here. Also, legs getting a little more tired. And with this, like, it's not a big feeling of ease, just a very slight one. But like I was saying earlier about when you're in a positive part of emotional cycle, there's no reason to worry about being in the negative. And then I was talking about how if you're in the negative part of the cycle, there's no reason to be hopeful for the positive, because you know that the positive is also just temporary. And you can't really escape the negative feelings that way. So now I think I am feeling some slight negative feelings. Not really negative, not very negative. But I'm also noticing maybe more critical judgment coming from myself about what I'm saying right now. And I wonder if that's being affected by these feelings. I mean, I'm noticing myself being more critical of the things that I'm saying right now, or at least I did a few seconds ago. And the feeling of self-consciousness, again, about the sound of my voice, the things that I'm saying, the whole action that I'm doing right now, and then I can just keep extending that to my whole being and my whole life, judging all of that critically and harshly. I do that pretty often. It happens regularly. I guess I suppose now I'm holding an awareness of that behavior, and maybe that'll do something, or it'll weaken that behavior, or maybe it'll just allow that behavior to be there, but with less weight or something. I don't know. Still, just thinking again about a thought I had by another person who biked past, who I thought to be a one person who maybe who looked in my direction and had what I judge to be an expression of lightness on her face, or enjoyment. More so, I noticed that more so than anyone else that I've noticed today. All right, I perceived her expression as being maybe amused or pleased at something, and I wondered what it was. I wondered if it. At first, I wondered if it had to do with seeing me with this video recorder talking into it, doing this action, but that doesn't seem likely, because what I'm doing here is like really not very apparent from the outside, just biking past at all. It doesn't. I don't think it really sticks out that much, or has anything particularly amusing or pleasing about it from the perspective of somebody biking past. And then that was a while ago, and then I was talking about lots of other stuff, and then that memory of that came back, and then I started to wonder if it was because of the t-shirt that I'm wearing, because it has a logo on it that is like, I think is amusing to me, at least, and amusing to just a few other people, and wondering if she saw that and was amused by it. And it's not really of any consequence at all. And now I'm wondering why I'm even talking about it. I'm judging myself again as perhaps saying things that aren't interesting to you, maybe not interesting to you, or like not especially considerate of your experience. They're just kind of, I don't know here. I'm just describing my experience, which is what I've been doing the whole time. But I'm doing it with you in mind. I'm communicating the whole thing to you, and it's at the same time all the time I'm thinking about your experience too, on a certain level. And so, talking about that particular scenario that happened in my mind, I started to think it's much less relevant to your experience unless you are someone who is just interested in my experience, or part of your experience is being interested in my experience, and that could be possible. I mean, especially considering the fact that you are watching this video. which is essentially just me describing my experience. Perhaps that suggests that you are interested in my continued experience within this framework of walking and talking for a duration. And I'm just thinking about like maybe what I was talking about with that experience with the woman on her bike. Is that I'm wondering, is that a more personal topic that isn't relevant to what I'm doing, or is it totally relevant because it's part of my experience? I guess it's probably I talked about it and it's in the past, so it's there, and I can just accept that, and I'm not going to necessarily make a choice about whether I'll continue to relate that sort of experience and that sort of thought in the future. I'll just kind of play that by ear and see what happens. Feeling slightly distracted again, and then I'm thinking that I also had a thought, a different thought that was coming up, that was occurring in my mind while I was telling you the last subject, and I have this vague recollection of judging that thought as being worthy of talking about, but I don't actually now remember what that thought was. Now I think I'm remembering. I think it had something to do with when I was talking about how I'm just describing my experience, but I'm also thinking about your experience. And I think what I'm really trying to do is have a shared experience. But of course, it's not a very interactive experience, in that I can't sense you. I can't see you or hear you at all. But I am aware that you are watching or listening, or at least listening. And so you are present in that way. Like you are affecting my experience just by the fact that you're watching. And so in that way, even though this is mediated through the internet, and there's also a time separation, you could say, in that you are not watching this or listening to this at the same time that I am experiencing it and talking and saying it and recording it. But ostensibly these things are happening at a different time, because this is not a live streamed video. It's I have to record it and then upload it, and so ostensibly there is a time separation. But also I find it interesting that we're both experiencing right now. We're both in the present right now. I'm doing this right now. I'm speaking these thoughts right now and walking and talking with this video camera, and you're watching and hearing these words also right now. And so this, in a way, I think that we are having a simultaneous shared experience. And yeah, like I said, it's not interactive in the conventional sense. For me, I do feel a kind of interaction in that I would not be thinking and talking this way. I would not be doing this action. I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing right now if it weren't for you listening and watching. It's like you are actually creating this experience in addition to me, or it requires both of us for this to be happening. I had, in that last pause, I had another little feeling of weariness that was both physical and mental. Like feeling my legs being a little tired, and also having the thought, oh, wouldn't it be nice to end this video now? To stop talking and then just return to normal life. And then as I had that thought, this thought of the possibility of ending the video now, which technically is possible because I haven't put a strict time requirement on myself for this video. I haven't told myself that the video must be a certain length. So there's no official part of me saying that I have to keep going, and so technically I could end it at any time. And so having this thought of the possibility of ending the video now led to this this kind of looking forward towards what I perceived as being a kind of relaxation or break from talking, not having to continually talk, not having to continually say every thought that I have. And that seemed appealing. But so when that happened, all I did was just continue to talk, or just go right back into talking and saying what was happening. And that kind of like, I don't know, I'm not sure if it got rid of those feelings, but it at least just kind of continued the process and kept this going. And I'm not going to say that that's a good thing or anything, but at least I have a feeling right now that that I'm doing some kind of work, and this is of course highly debatable. But I think it's like, that there is a kind of difficulty or effort involved, a kind of work involved in continuing to talk this long and to say every thought that I have for this long period. And so that there is some form of unease or something like that will maybe could go the whole time or something. But then, on the other hand, if I did stop the recording and I was just walking now, like walking back to my home without talking, then I think that there would be the thing is, I would still be thinking probably. And it's like, and then in addition to thinking, I'd probably have this thought that I'm not doing any work right now, that I'm just walking. And there's also a kind of unease associated with the feeling of not doing any work that I'm guessing you may be familiar with. I mean, when you do like a lot of work, you do a full day of work, you stop work, and then you don't feel like working. You don't. If you've worked hard and long, then you don't feel any. You might not feel any unease with the prospect of not doing anything productive, and it would feel good to do something that's fun and relaxing and brings pleasure. And knowing that feeling, that makes me actually want to continue to do this longer, so that by the time that I do end it, I will have worked longer and will hopefully have more of this enjoyment of ceasing work than I would have if I ended this recording right now and then just continued to walk home for a while, feeling like I'm not doing any work. And it's somebody read to me a quote once that was something to the effect of, like a working person like has the work of going to a job every day and doing whatever they do. But then if you have like a person that doesn't have a job, it's like, or they don't do anything that appears to be work, or is not in the conventional sense considered work. It's as if they do actually do a form of work, and the form of work, I think in this quote, was like characterizing like a beggar. It was some older quote, like characterizing a beggar as having like lots of wrinkles and varicose veins and being like kind of physically having deleterious health effects as a result of their poverty. And so the quote was kind of implying that those deleterious effects of having not doing any work are themselves a form of work that is not any less noble than the other forms of work that we do. And I think the argument is that I'm going to interrupt myself to tell you this thought that I'm having while I'm talking about this quote, to tell you that I am judging myself critically for having gone onto this topic that's kind of about a preformed thought that I had, or something that's related to the past, or that has this kind of like anecdote or whatever it is, a metaphor that somebody else told me, a literary reference. I'm just informing you that I'm aware that this is maybe going off the track of what I'm going to do, that what I'm trying to do, or that I may be getting into the realm of didactic wisdom giver, which is not something that I'm interested in at all. And in fact, I think it would be perfectly acceptable to just abandon ship on that whole metaphor thing, that whole literary thing, the quote thing, because I think it was just going in the direction of making a certain point of something about the idea, something about ideas about labor that would have sounded, like insightful, or something that was made to sound insightful. But I'm not really. I don't really feel interested in insight. Or actually, what I really mean is that I'm not interested in repeating a past insight. Which is something that I was getting at with that quote thing, and like it felt like this long explanation of something that already had a preformed conclusion in my mind of the point that I was going to make. And so that started to become uninteresting to me because I knew where I was going already. And so then that's why I started having these doubtful thoughts happening while I was talking. So then I just kind of revealed those thoughts, and it led me into this kind of discovery of why I became uninterested in continuing to complete that thought. And so like that process involved discovery for me, which is more interesting to me. Just now, I'm not sure if it got in the frame or not, but there's a little piece of ceramic tile or porcelain tile or something lying there on the ground, and I was drawn towards it, and I went over and I kind of pointed the camera at it and was maybe going to say something or just tell you that I was looking at a tile, and then I decided not to say that as I was having it, just continued on. And I realized that why I was kind of attracted towards that tile, having to do with like having done some tile work in my house, and then with tiles that I found in the trash, and then having been thinking about tiles a lot, and just kind of having tiles on the mind, and then seeing one and just like being drawn towards it. But I'm going to stop talking about that now, because it seems like a personal thing that's not especially relevant to our shared experience. Unless, of course, the given thing of if you are, you may be somebody who's interested in the personal details of my life, but and I have no problem with that, with you being interested in them, but I don't think it's the most productive thing to talk about. And I use the word productive lightly, or in scare quotes or something. Yeah, scare quotes. Because I don't think anything's really productive. Especially not this. But what I want to say is personal details of my life, I don't think necessarily affect our shared experience in a way that's really interesting. When I stop and I pause and I think about things to say, it's interesting because all the thoughts that occur are usually something about the past or the future, something kind of like situational and concrete, but also having to do with like the past or the future, and maybe I'm pausing because like those are thoughts that I'm auditioning to say, and I don't say them because I'm looking for the thought that's the most relevant to the present. And I think that happened in this case. In this instance, I had that pause, and then I proceeded to say something about what was happening in that pause that I didn't really know that I was going to say until it was happening. And it's not something that I've specifically noticed before. So that seems in line with whatever goals I might have in talking. So I guess I'm considering it a sort of victory over, or it's a kind of progress or insight into what happens when those pauses happen, because I generally feel a little bit uneasy with the pauses. So like now that extra little insight into one of the things that might be happening during the pauses will be useful for future pauses, and perhaps cause those pauses to be a little shorter and less frequent, and help for the stream of talking to continue more fluently without interruption, and which is along the lines of my goal for walking and talking. to which relates to this wanting to exist in time in a different mental state than the normal good-bad dichotomy, than the normal practical mode of going about life. And wanting, I think it's wanting to extend my own capacity for different types of experience in life. I could say that wording felt a little bit awkward. I think it's has to do with on a very basic level, I could say that it's a type of strategy for me to avoid suffering. But now that I think about it, it may be just that walking and talking is perhaps just a different framework to experience being myself, but that still includes suffering. But it could also be said that it's not suffering, because even though I do experience some negative feelings during it, it's also I think that I'm it's a way of picking apart those negative feelings and understanding them in a certain way, or at least probing into them and revealing my thoughts about them. And it's not just I'm not just revealing thoughts by talking. It's not like I had all these thoughts beforehand and now I'm saying them to you. For the most part, it's the thoughts are being generated as I talk to you. I definitely wouldn't be having all of these thoughts if I weren't doing this. And I think that one way that I could look at it is that while I'm doing this, I'm not really suffering. At least I don't think that I'm actually suffering. I may be experiencing pain or negative emotions, but this seems like a way to experience them perhaps without suffering from them. Because in some way they're all contained within this framework of walking and talking, and they are all getting like investigated and expressed with words. And so I'm thinking about now, like, what I'm comparing my experience of walking and talking to other experiences of my life while I'm not walking and talking, and I'm trying to see if there's a qualitative difference, and to see if, and wondering if I suffer in daily life but don't suffer during walking, talking. That seems, I kind of feel that way right now, but it seems like kind of a stretch to say that just because I started doing this thing, walking and talking, that all I have to do is this and then I won't suffer anymore. But it has to do with the definition of suffering. And one way to think about suffering, I think, is experiencing pain needlessly, you could say. Like, you will always experience, you can't really avoid experiencing pain in life. It's definitely inevitable. And maybe suffering has to do with self-created pain. I don't know. Like some people, I think, would say, I'm kind of confused about this. I think I've heard somebody describe suffering as experiencing more pain than is necessary. And that implies that there's some necessary pain and then there's some unnecessary pain, and it implies that some of that unnecessary pain is something that you're creating for yourself. But when I say that, it sounds a little strange to me. This dichotomy of creating pain for yourself or having pain that you didn't create. I realize that could be a valid distinction. But at the same time, I'm wondering if it might also be an unnecessary dichotomy. Because, say like, for example, you fall down the stairs and let's say somebody pushes you down the stairs, and then you have an injury that's very painful for a while. And so, of course, that's pain that you did not create for yourself, yet you are feeling it physically. And then, so maybe the example would be that that's necessary pain, and then the unnecessary pain would be like the emotional suffering surrounding that, where you feel extremely upset for a long time about the fact that somebody pushed you down the stairs. And so perhaps people would consider that unnecessary pain or actual suffering, because ostensibly you could get yourself into a mental state where you don't feel emotional pain because of something like that. But I don't feel so sure about that. Um, I conceivably, yes. I'm sure that there are people that cultivate a kind of very healthy thought habits and emotional resilience. But I wonder if there's just as much difficulty and pain involved in that, in cultivating that sort of thing. But I guess what I'm saying is that if a person does experience emotional pain that's triggered by uncontrolled circumstances, that also that emotional response isn't necessarily controlled by them. I guess that's kind of debatable, like what somebody has control over, or what control is, what what personal autonomy we have in that regard. My brow is really furrowed because I'm feeling like, again, very self-critical of what I'm saying, because it feels like I'm putting forth effort right now to arrive at a kind of conclusion or insight about what suffering is, what pain is necessary and what pain is not necessary, and this whole thing of trying to create a definition of suffering relates back to my question of whether, while I'm walking and talking, whether I'm actually suffering sometimes, or if I'm actually not suffering while I'm in this framework. And my feeling is that I'm not suffering. I for some reason I want to say that I'm not suffering while I'm doing this, even when I am experiencing difficulty while talking. But maybe the next time that I'm experiencing negative emotions or difficulty while walking and talking, then I can check back in again and see whether I feel like I'm suffering or not. And that would be a better indicator, perhaps. Yeah, I think so. I'm feeling more physically weary now, like my feeling the tiredness in my legs more, because as I said, I already did a lot of physical activity today, but that doesn't feel like suffering, really. It just feels like tiredness, just like some physical tiredness, and it's actually making me look forward to when I get home and the video's over and I will be able to rest and relax, and so it's like if this is a negative feeling, then to the extent that it's negative, it's like causing me to look forward to this positive and imagine this positive in the future. And because of that, it doesn't feel so negative in the present either. So if it doesn't feel so negative in the present, I wonder if that will decrease what would have been the positive feelings in the future. I guess I can try and find out then. And I think that's probably true. That if I was like truly suffering from the tiredness in my body, if I was truly suffering it, like this is almost unbearable, then I imagine that probably that when I got to the point of resting, that would feel that much more pleasant. But this feels pretty obvious to me and probably doesn't need to be said. It's pretty similar to things that I've already said a lot. So now I'm again looking for something new to say. This feeling of wanting to say the thing that's most, I guess it's the wanting to say the thing that feels like an actual discovery. But I don't feel it yet. I don't feel like I'm onto the train of thought that involves discovery yet, but it's actually I probably am, even if I don't know it yet. What I'm saying now, even though I said it, that it feels like I'm not sure that I don't know where I'm going with this thought, basically. But that's actually a necessary precondition for discovery. Like I have to actually not know what I'm doing in order to lead to the discovery, and that fact in itself just now feels like a little discovery, or not even that little of a discovery. Like seems like a significant enough in relation to the searching and wondering that I was experiencing just prior to it. And so now, having that feeling of discovery, having had it, I'm back again into the process of wondering. I'm in the stage of wondering again what will be the next thing that feels like a discovery, and I'm beginning to see that this is also a kind of cycle of going in a state of unknowing, and then a state of discovery, and then this state of discovery. Since you have that discovery, then it kind of stops the forward searching momentum, because it's a form of resolution, and then because that momentum stops, it kind of ends the train of thought, or it ends the forward momentum that was created by the searching and the wondering. But then by ending it, then it puts you back into that state of wondering what's going to happen next, because it's the state, having discovery, it simultaneously stops the forward momentum, but then it also puts you puts you back into the unknowing, because you are unknowing of what you're doing now and what you're going to discover next. And so I had never thought about that cycle, that as a cycle before. And having formulated that thought, that idea of that as a kind of continuous cycle, could be thought of as a discovery. And it's interesting because it's a discovery that's about the process of discovery itself. So it seems like a very particular or peculiar type of discovery, or like a kind of self-reflexive type of discovery, which really has me wondering where I'm going to go next with thinking. And yeah, there was just like that pause right there, like that gap right there, like that was really just like wondering what I'm going to say next, what I'm going to think next. I have no idea. I mean, like literally, there is not an idea about what I'm going to say next, and that's not. I'm not trying to wear that as a badge of honor, or of being some kind of explorer or something, or being brave to not know what I'm going to think, because that's not really a special thing. But it's like the tension that's opposite the resolution, or the dissonance that's opposite the consonance. And I'm judging myself a little critically now, because now I feel like I'm just like rewording the same idea, using slightly different terminology. But it could also be said that really almost everything is just like looking, in a way, just kind of looking at the same thing from different angles. But that's totally fine. Or I want to say that's not a. I think I'll just drop that line of thought, and just try to like drop into like trying to think without even attempting to have any continuity with the past thoughts. Seems like an interesting endeavor to try and think as if you are not on any continuity, or there's trying to think as like without relation to the past. Like what would you think now if you hadn't had been thinking anything before? I don't know if it's really, I don't think it's actually possible. I'm just would be interesting to just have these like jumps of thought, to jump to something completely unrelated from what you just said, or from what I just thought. And that maybe seems to happen. Like now, as I was saying that, I could have expressed this thought that I was having, like, oh, this seems really dumb to me, what I'm saying. What I'm saying seems really dumb to me, and I'm tired. and I'm maybe my energy is trailing off here. I'm getting physically and mentally tired. Also, the battery is starting to get lower on this camera. So there could be a cut if the battery runs out. Then hopefully I should notice before much time elapses, and then I'll just put the fresh batteries in, and we'll continue. Unless this lasts me to the end of the video. Like I said, I don't have a set time frame for the video, but it'll probably end when I get to the part of the trail where I started. Is a logical place to end. Then I was also thinking, I'm just rambling now, and but the idea of rambling, I think, is the idea of having a lot of disconnected thoughts one after the other, no continuity in thought. And like I said, I thought that was an interesting goal to try. But it also feels like a kind of rambling that's not. I'm judging this rambling that I'm doing as not being, at least right now, like in the past minute or so, starting from about a minute ago, I'm judging this particular, what I'm calling rambling, as being not particularly intentional as rambling, like not as if I have mastered continuous trains of thought, and now for my, just to challenge myself and you, I'm intentionally jumping from thought to thought, unrelated, as a kind of mental feat, a kind of mental acrobatics. I don't think that that's happening, but I had the judgment of this kind of rambling being more due to mental fatigue than to anything else. But now, as I'm saying that, I don't feel particularly mentally fatigued right now. I feel like I'm noticing the words coming out of my mouth as being articulated fairly well, and I maybe have been continuing, at least in the past maybe half a minute or so, to be talking without a lot of stops and stutters and uhs and ums, which happens to me sometimes. I'm not sure if that's totally an accurate perception of how I've been talking in the past few moments, but if it is the case, then that seems like a success or an improvement, because I would like to be able to continue to talk in an engaging way to you, to keep engaging your attention and creating an interesting experience for you to have. And if I can continue, if I can keep that up and improve that quality of speaking, I think it will be a good thing, and it will decrease my own suffering and maybe yours too. And also, since I'm nearing the end of the video, it could be a good way to end the video on a note of ramping up of energy and focus and concentration, because ramping that up really as high as you can get it towards the end, to me, feels like a really good way to end things, rather than petering off and the energy lulling and the focus falling off, and which I would associate with the type of rambling that feels a little bit low energy and like it's a person being mentally fatigued or mentally fogged or unclear or something like that. But instead, I would like to be able to feel like I'm really focused. And I do actually feel right now like I am more focused than usual right now, and that I've been continuing a train of thought, or like feeling the continuity, and what that continuity is actually is more a continuity of my own awareness of what I'm saying, more so than any conceptual continuity regarding the content of what I'm saying. It more has to do with not having gaps of attention where my mind is thinking about something other than what I'm saying. That is what is creating the continuity that I feel right now and the focus right now. And I do feel a strong amount of effort being put into that. I can feel myself focusing, and I can feel the effort involved in it. But as long as I keep doing it, and it's like maintaining a balance, like walking on a tightrope or something. And if I can keep doing that, if the effort doesn't feel difficult, it's like if I can keep this balance of keeping my attention really directly on what I'm saying right now in the present moment, without having the thoughts come into my head while I'm saying something else. If I can really narrow my attention span right down to just experiencing my thoughts as I say them, that's what I'm trying to do here. But even right now, when I said I'm trying to do that, I wondered if that was a little bit off, or to speak of trying to do something, I wonder if that diverts me from actually doing the thing that I say that I'm trying to do, and that if I am able to suspend this idea of trying and suspend this idea of succeeding at failing or do something, that I may actually be able to maintain a continuity of doing something without being totally in control of it. Or actually, maybe I am in control of it, but it's like the effort is not difficult, or the effort is not apparent to me, or it feels like a kind of effortless effort. And if I am interested in that, or at least I can say that I'm interested in what I'm saying in the present, and interested in what's going to come out next. And I'm also experiencing the memory now of the past few minutes of talking and feeling like it's particularly focused or particularly rapid, like I'm talking pretty more rapid than I was before, and that with much less gaps, and being able to say what I'm thinking really immediately after I think it, without having to think the thoughts in my head while I'm saying something else and audition them. I'm feeling less of that auditioning happening and more of the just talking happening right now. And I'm not going to say that I like it. I'm not going to say that I don't like it. I'm just going to try and let it continue for as long as it'll go, or until I get to the point where I feel like stopping. And I'm wondering now, like, if I wonder if I can maintain this any longer. If I think that I can, but then there's also this idea of stopping that's coming up very soon. And so I think I might indulge that impulse of stopping the recording. That's what I'm thinking about doing, but I haven't reached yet the point in the trail where I started. There's still some distance on the trail to go, so I'm wondering if I should continue to walk and talk and really push myself and make this effort to continue talking until I get back to that original point. But it feels like it's kind of far off now, so it feels like a little bit daunting, and I feel a little bit scared. But if I think actually if I can just not think about that I would be able to keep going if I'm able to keep talking very, very rapidly, or at least very fluently. Maybe it doesn't necessarily have to be as rapid as I've been talking in the past several minutes, but it has to keep going fluently and not have the gaps and pauses and the thoughts and the auditioned thoughts and the thoughts that happen while I'm thinking, because when that happens, there's this possibility of these thoughts about the future coming in, and it's the thoughts about the future that create this idea of worry or scared, or the idea that I should stop. It's the idea of the future that can be daunting, because if I'm not thinking about the future and how long it's going to be, then there's no possibility for it to be scared, because I'm just speaking about the present and speaking in the present, and in that I'm not suffering. And as long as I can keep that up, then it seems like I can go for a long time. And really, I think that there's I think there is a great capacity to go to do things longer than you may think that you can do them. And it's you can now here we have this gap again, this gap going on. And I it's because I started to hear myself sounding like a motivational speaker and saying things like, you can push yourself beyond your limits, you can do more than you can think you do, it's just your mind telling you that you can't. And I found myself thinking those things. And yes, I am thinking those things, and it feels true and everything. But then I had this averse feeling to sounding like a motivational speaker. Like I had this association in my mind of somebody pushing you, like a life coach or a personal fitness trainer or something, telling you can go further. And it's all in the mind above matter, and that sort of thing. And why do I not like that? I don't know. Maybe maybe I have a weird judgment of those types of endeavors being misguided or something, or that maybe I don't know why. Maybe I'm just jealous of those people that push themselves beyond their perceived limits, because I would like to do that myself. And maybe I did do that in the recent past a little bit. Like just now, like I was talking very, very rapidly, and now I'm not talking as rapidly, but I was talking very rapidly and thinking, and I could feeling my level of thought accelerate, and I was thinking that I was maybe gonna stop, so that I could stop at this high point of energy, where, because it would be leaving the video at an end at a high point of energy, like a good feeling, a feeling of victory. And yeah, that's what my thinking was, to stop then while I was at a particularly high energy. But then I decided to keep going to reach a certain soft goal that I set, not a hard and fast goal, but a soft goal that I set of continuing the video until I reached the point where I began. and that's still a little ways further. And so I am still pushing myself to talk. Like, this doesn't actually feel comfortable to me. I definitely don't feel comfortable, but I feel like I'm doing work. I feel physically, when I pay attention, if I notice my body, I can notice it feeling physically tired. And if I stop long enough to notice my mind, then I notice it feeling mentally tired. But if I just don't stop, then I don't notice it and I don't feel tired, and I am able to keep talking, and it's okay. In some part of me, I'm aware of the effort and the difficulty of doing this. But it's like the other part of me can just keep going and keeping that to the side or something, even though I am acknowledging it and aware of it. I'm just like, I don't know if I'm overpowering it. Maybe I am, but really the only thing to be said is that I'm just continuing. That's all. I'm just keeping going. And that's kind of that's pretty much what I think about living and life, is to just keep going. And that's all. I don't really have anything else to say in terms of advice for a way to live, other than just keep going. And that's not even really a needed piece of advice. I don't think that's really needs to be said. Unless you were thinking about killing yourself, then maybe I would recommend considering the possibility of just keeping going, and what that would feel like. But I know that if someone is in a suicidal state, then they've probably considered a lot, the options of continuing to go, keeping going, or the options of ceasing their identifiable physical form via inducing death. But also there's, I think there's often overlooked possibilities when someone does kill themselves. There may be overlooked possibilities of how to keep going, of a way to keep going that doesn't involve so much suffering. I think. There's another pause there, and I wonder if if a pause in my talking is analogous to stopping in life. Not really. I don't think so. I think it's just a rest. But I'm trying to for this duration to go without rest, really. And I find that maybe it's just because I've imposed this upon myself. It probably is just that I've imposed that goal on myself, that when I have stopped talking, it doesn't actually feel like rest. It's not really a rest, because then I feel myself struggling. I was gonna say something that sounded really repetitive, and now I have to just jump off of this train of thought and find myself in the wilderness again. Oh, the battery's really low. Which means either I can stop the video very soon and it'll all be continuous, or I can keep going and let the battery run out, and then there will be a little cut where I will put in new batteries and then continue the video for just a few more minutes because I'm really close to the point of the trail where I think I will probably stop. So I think that's okay if there's a little cut. We'll see how long these batteries go. And don't worry if there's a cut. I'm not worried if there's a cut. But at the same time, wouldn't it be great if the batteries lasted me all the way to the end of the trail? With that prospect in mind, I'm going to start walking faster, despite my aching legs. The sun's going down, and the video will encapsulate the sunset. Well, it doesn't show the sunset per se, but the video will involve dusk, and I don't have anything else to say about that. And it wasn't necessary to say, but nothing that I'm saying is necessary to say. Especially that. What now? What'll I say next? You might are you hearing a little tone of sarcasm in my voice as I said, what'll I say next? What's gonna come out of my mouth next? There was the cut. The cut happened. I noticed the screen of the video camera being black, and I'm sure that it didn't last for longer than a few seconds. I'm pretty sure that I didn't go longer than a few seconds. But it was interesting because I noticed it right at the moment that I noticed a particular physical object next to the trail, and I went to point the camera at it and to point out that physical object of my own personal interest that I found and to describe it. But since the batteries had gone out, I think that may have been cut off, or maybe a short part of it got seen. But then I had the thought that it's just like that physical object of my own personal interest feels a little bit extrinsic to the cause here. I mean, it's not that there's a cause, but that it feels too particular, too actually, yeah, too much of an object, really, an object of thought. There's a thing on the side of the road. Maybe I'll tell you what it was. Maybe I won't. And maybe it made it into the video, and maybe it got cut out. But I did choose to point it out. But maybe it got cut out for the better, because it's a particular object that you can think about, and maybe even desire. It's an object that some people desire, or at least find interesting or fascinating. And it's not really my goal to make things to show you interesting or fascinating things, or desirable thoughts, or even neither desirable objects or even like desirable knowledge. Like I'm not trying to I don't want you to come away from this with any sort of knowledge. I don't want you to come away with this from any sort of thought that you have grown as a person. That's not. We can leave all of that aside, because that's extrinsic to our shared experience right now of me talking, thinking and talking and walking, and you watching and listening. let's just have this experience together instead of me telling you all kinds of interesting things. It doesn't matter, like, no particular thing that you could be interested in matters in any kind of ultimate sense. You'll become interested in one thing or the other. I don't know, maybe that's not true. Now I feel like I'm giving you advice, which is kind of silly. I'm almost there. I'm almost to the end of walking and talking. You can see my shadow. I'm talking with more gaps. But now I don't think I mind it. Am I thinking between the gaps? Maybe a little bit. Maybe a little bit. But I'm not having too many thoughts that I'm deeming as unfit. In these little pauses between the things that I'm saying, and now I think I'm doing it on purpose. I'll have a thought, and then I'll say it. A thought comes up as a sentence fragment, and then I say it. And pretty much in these past few moments, this moments with the kind of halting and pauses, each thought that comes up for me in those moments, I say it. I haven't been having thoughts that I don't say right now. I'm not thinking anything that I'm not saying. Okay, that seems like a good way to end. I think I'm about there. All right. I don't know if you can see me in the dark. See you next time.